We are 3 days removed from the Packers' loss to the Bills, and most of the opinions I see in here are doom and gloom for the Packers. It wasn't nearly so negative a week ago, but this loss seems to have pushed a lot of fans over the edge. Has this team and front office failed as much as people seem to think? Let's talk about it. Welcome to the Packer Mentality Podcast. My name is Patrick Corrigan, and I am your host. You can find and follow me on Twitter at Packer Mentality. My podcasts are available on YouTube, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Anchor. If you are watching me on YouTube, please help me out, help my channel, and hit the subscribe button below. It costs you nothing. Thank you for joining me. I really do appreciate you guys listening or watching. My opinion of this team hasn't really changed with the loss to the Bills, unlike a lot of people. I didn't expect them to win that game. Go back and listen to the episodes from last week. I actually thought there was a pretty good chance they would get completely embarrassed. This was a really good Bills team, probably the best team in the league. They lost as I expected, and the score wasn't really indicative of how much better the Bills were. But it wasn't an embarrassment, and I thought there were a couple of areas that actually showed some improvement by this team. If you want to place blame for the Packers' 3-5 start and sinking chances to even make the playoffs this season, let me help you out with that. I think it's fair to find fault with more than a few things. The coaches, the players, and the GM, they all share some of that responsibility. Let's start at the top. Players not playing up to their draft potential or not having enough talent at certain positions falls on the GM. A big point of contention is what has happened with the offense at wide receiver. That actually has been the main issue I've had with this team for the past couple of years. Brian Gutekunst inherited this problem from Ted Thompson. As much as Packer fans like to revere Ted Thompson, he failed this team as well. Early in Ted's tenure, he did a great job of keeping the offense stocked for Aaron Rodgers. But the defense really struggled after winning the Super Bowl. And after drafting Davante Adams in 2014, Ted had to spend a lot of high draft picks on defense trying to fix it, which meant he was ignoring the offense. If he had just done a better job hiring defensive coaches, they wouldn't have had this problem. But that didn't happen, and it was still a mess when Gutekunst took over, so he's also had to spend a lot of premium picks on defense at the expense of the offense. In the 7 drafts following the pick of Davante Adams, the Packers have had 15 first or second round picks. I tweeted about this. 8 of them were spent on defensive backs, 4 on offensive linemen, 2 on defensive linemen, 1 running back, and 1 quarterback. Before the season. In the meantime, they released Jordy Nelson, released and brought back Randall Cobb, and then traded Davante Adams. Now, it was obvious that Davante Adams was the only reliable target Aaron Rodgers had for the past couple seasons. And when you look at the best offenses in this league, with the exception of the Ravens, all of them have good to great number 1 wide receivers and solid number 2 wide receivers. The Packers didn't have that the past couple of seasons, and they definitely don't have it now. Look at what they are trying to get away with this season at wide receiver. Their preferred starters going into training camp were Allen Lazard, Randall Cobb, and Sammy Watkins. I like Allen Lazard, but let's be realistic. Despite what Aaron Rodgers tried to pump him up to before the season, he was an undrafted free agent that the Jaguars thought he was just good enough to be on their practice squad. Compared to receiver groups on good teams in this league, Allen Lazard would be a good number 3 or an average to a below average number 2. And he might be gone after the season, and he's hurt. Not blaming him for being hurt, but that's reality. Randall Cobb came back. He's actually been really good this season, but he's also hurt. this is probably going to be his last year with the Packers and in the NFL at all. They brought in Sammy Watkins as the big free agent wide receiver after Marquez Valdes-Scantling, Equanimeous St. Brown, and Davante Adams all ended up somewhere else this offseason. Watkins had the reputation of being injury prone. Everybody knew that, and it's proven to be true. He's already missed 4 games. Gutekunst did draft 3 wide receivers in this year's draft, but it feels like this was kind of too late, and he didn't do anything at the trade deadline. I don't blame him for doing nothing at the trade deadline. He would have had to give up a number 1 pick for someone, quite frankly, wasn't worth it. So let's move on to the players. If guys aren't playing up to their talent level, aren't playing up to their expectations, or even playing at the level, even playing at the level they played at last season, this team was going to struggle. And there are way too many players, veteran players on this team that are underperforming or just bad this season. And there are starters for the Packers that should be benched and probably should be looking for new teams in the offseason, or the Packers should be looking to find them new teams in the offseason. On the offense, 3 of the 14 returning players, and I'm just going to say returning players, I'm not pinning this on the rookies. 3 of those, only 3 of those players are playing as well as expected, maybe. At quarterback, Aaron Rodgers, well below expectations. Now, I do understand he's had offensive line issues, had issues at wide receiver, not on the same page, dropped passes, and he's been hurt. But even so, this is not what we expect from a reigning 2-time MVP. And he's honestly partially to blame for the wide receiver issues because he did not bother to show up in the offseason to work with these guys. So part of that's on him. Running backs. Aaron Jones, one of the few guys that is playing as well, playing up the expectations. A.J. Dillon has been a little bit up and down, not quite as good as last season, but regardless of any of that, these guys aren't getting used enough. Wide receiver, Allen Lazard is hurt, and as far as expectations go, not performing up to expectations. Whether he deserves that or not, it is what it is. Randall Cobb actually is one of the guys that's living or performing up to expectations, but he is hurt. Sammy Watkins, not performing up to expectations, and he's been hurt. Amari Rodgers, incomplete as far as a wide receiver goes, but punt returner, not up to expectations. The rookies, not going to be hard on these guys. Romeo Doubs actually has been better than expected for a 4th-round pick. He looks like he's going to be a starter and could be a good starter for the Packers. Shows a lot of promise. Christian Watson, he's been hurt. 2nd-round pick. Not faulting him. Hope he gets better. Hope he's okay. And I hope he develops into what they hope he can be. 7th-rounder Samori Toure. Actually got to see him on the field the last couple weeks, and he actually looks pretty good. Looks like he has a place on this team going forward. At least in the 2 games we've seen him, he's looked good. Offensive line has been mostly bad. David Bakhtiari, one of the few guys that I think is performing up to what he should be. He is still recovering from his knee injury, but he's been mostly good coming back. Elton Jenkins also recovering from a knee injury. He is not what he was. Hopefully he continues to improve. Center Josh Myers, he's been okay. Uh, Not sure he's quite what we expect him to be yet. Uh, John Runyon Jr., not as good as last season. He is playing on the opposite side from last season, so hopefully he'll get better. Royce Newman, who's been benched, but he was a starter for most of the season so far. He was way down from last season, and last season wasn't good. Josh Neisman, down from last season, but he is also in a new position. One other guy that has started a few games, Zach Tom, he is a rookie. Not faulting him. He had one good game and one not so good game. Should get better with time. On the defense, only one player is playing up to expectations from a group that was supposed to be good, and they're not. This was supposed to be an elite, allegedly supposed to be an elite group. They even said so themselves, and they are a bottom third defense. Defensive line has been terrible. Terrible against the run. They're getting pushed around. Two of the guys leading that charge to get pushed around, Dean Lowry, who's been terrible. Jerron Reed, his pass rushing's been okay, but not good against the run. Kenny Clark has been okay, but not up to what he's been previous seasons. First round draft pick Devontae Wyatt, not going to be too hard on him, but I don't understand why he's not on the field if you have two other guys that are playing poorly. On the edge, Rashawn Gary has been good against the pass. He's been bad against the run. And considering everything else that's happening up front, that's really a problem. On the other side, Preston Smith, he's been okay against the pass and okay against the run. Linebackers, Devondre Campbell, all-pro last season, and has been mostly terrible this season. Maybe because he's now got Quay Walker next to him, which is new to him, and Quay Walker is a rookie. Quay, he's a rookie. I'm not going to be too hard on him. He's been bad against the run. In the secondary, the one player who on this defense who has been playing up to expectations is Jaire Alexander. He's been good. The only problem, and this is not a knock on Jaire, is why isn't he lining up against number one wide receivers? That's a coaching issue. Other cornerbacks, Eric Stokes hasn't looked very good this year. He's not playing as well as last year. He's been terrible against the run as well. Actually got him benched for a little bit against the Bills. Rasul Douglas, he's been okay, but I do think he's playing out of position in the slot. Probably should be moved outside, also a coaching issue. At the safety position, and the safety position has been really bad. Both Darnell Savage, who's been really bad and should be benched, and probably Packers should find a way to move on from him altogether in the offseason. Adrian Amos, not as good as last season, and kind of has been bad in a bunch of points this season. Now, as bad as the player's performance has been, some of that, as I mentioned, does get put on the coaches. Real quick, because this video is already getting long, the offense, Matt LaFleur, this offense looks out of sync. It doesn't look like they spent enough time together. That goes back to training camp. That goes back to you making these guys play together, even in preseason. There is no commitment to the running game until this past game. Why? If you have to address it several weeks in a row that you aren't running the ball enough, that's on you. Offensive line is regressed. Wrong people were starting. Players that needed to be benched. Not sure why. Everybody could see it. Fans. Reporters, podcasters, everybody saw what needed to be done, but it took 6 weeks for any changes to be made. Not sure why that is. Defensively, mentioned it when talking about Jair Alexander. Why isn't he on the number one wide receiver? Why are we not playing more press man? And since we're not playing press man, why do these guys not know their assignments and not communicate better when they're playing zone? That's all coaching. Also, probably goes back to training camp as well when the defense did not play during the preseason. If you're playing zone defense with guys that are better at press man, it means you're not taking advantage of your talent. For all the negativity we just went through, there were some positives that did show up during the game against the Bills. These are areas that I will go over in previewing the game for the Lions, which I will do tomorrow. In the meantime, hope you guys have a better week. Have hope. There are some winnable games coming up, and there is still a chance this team can make the playoffs. But they do have to make some adjustments and play better. So, have a great rest of your week. Please be safe. Please be good to one another, and go Pack Go.